This is a video about home care tips and the things that I have learned from owning a house. We've owned this house for 5 years, and I've been a real estate agent for 7 years. So I've seen a few houses. I've had contractors in and out of my property. So I have some experience to give you on that. So here we go. The big main thing I would say for house maintenance is your furnace filter, your HVAC filter. So that's the lifeblood of the house. It's like changing the oil on your car and how your mechanics tell you you need to get this done regularly. It will drastically improve the lifespan of your car's engine. In the same way, your furnace filter is going to drastically improve the life of your furnace and your AC, the ductwork, everything that's involved in there with when you're regularly changing that filter out. So you want to change that filter out once a month, maybe once every few months. And it's going to depend on how much stuff is circulating through your house. Do you have a lot of pollen? Is there a lot of dust? Is there a lot of construction going on outside? Wildfire smoke in the air? You know, if you've got a thick furnace filter with a high MERV rating. And so basically, you're just looking for a filter that is going to block out that kind of stuff or whatever pollutants you're looking to block out. And anybody that works on an HVAC system is going to tell you get a furnace filter that's the cheapest one you can get, thinnest filter that you can find, lowest, rating, because what that's going to do is improve the quality and the lifespan of your furnace because there is less for it to have to blow through in that filter. So the trade-off is that you're not going to filter out as many particles in the air if you're concerned about that and you're like, hey, I've got bad allergies. I need a thicker filter for that air to go through. That can be a lifesaver, but potentially that can come at the cost of shortening your furnace's lifespan. So replacing a furnace, at this point in time, it could be, a $5,000 cost to do that. It really just depends on the size of it and, the complexity, I guess, of having to replace the furnace, but it is a cost. So having a good filter like that is going to keep you from um, problems down the road. Changing it often, I would say, is more important than the thickness of the filter. Maybe during the summer you have a thicker filter. That's what I do. And in the wintertime, I have a thinner filter because I'm not so worried about stuff in the air during the wintertime. But as you like. So it's really just, I'll give you a great example of this was when we have backyard chickens now, but we had backyard chickens last year when we were raising them during the winter time. And so it was still early springtime. So we were raising them in the basement because it was too cold outside. So we had a tent inside and had like hay and or whatever, like the dust or the sawdust stuff. So the shavings. So we had them all in there, and then that gunked up my furnace filter, and so I called an HVAC because I had no idea what was going on. And so after some digging around, he's just like, "Your furnace filter is just got that much stuff stuck on it. It's that thick with stuff." And it was from all the hay and sawdust stuff that was directly next to the furnace. And so while we were keeping the chicks, I had to change that furnace filter out once a week because it got that dirty that fast. You're not going to have to do that very likely. Again, this is something you change once a month, maybe once every couple of months if there's not a lot. You just check it and see if it's getting dirty and there's getting a lot of stuff on it. Just switch it out. Make sure that there's a direction, a specific direction these furnace filters go. So just make sure the arrow is pointed toward your system, from the ducting to the furnace part itself. That's the direction the arrow needs to go. Similarly, your whole HVAC system, you should get it serviced. You should get it cleaned. I would recommend having an HVAC person just come in and make sure that everything is working properly, that the components are working. But you can also have a separate cleaning company. Some companies will charge you a few $100s to run some, vacuums with some suction power through the vents to get stuff out, and they'll show you, oh, look at all the stuff from the prior owners and the sucker and Legos and stuff. And then you can pay like $1,300 for a company that will actually cut holes in your ducting system to get into each individual part. They're spraying it with antimicrobial stuff as well, but they have a much more powerful system, and it's a lot more expensive, but it is getting it way cleaner than the cheaper option for a few $100s. So I would recommend if you have the money. Otherwise, it's not a common thing that people are doing here. But if you're concerned about the air you're breathing and you want it to be really, really clean, that could be an option for you. Another thing I would keep an eye on is water. As I mean, in Colorado Springs, it's really dry here, but May through like half of July this year, we had a lot of moisture. And so we had a lot of mold and water contractors who were just busy because they were addressing so many people's concerns. So that's what happens when you don't typically have water and all of a sudden you start having water from the weather. You can reveal problems that did not previously exist. And sometimes, things just happen and people's plumbing goes awry while they're on vacation. That's when it always happens. But so for the water issue, I would pay attention to your grading around your property. Likely when you bought the property, your home inspector may have noted grading, essentially how uh, the soil goes away. It should be going away from your property. So when you're looking at the property, the foundation, the dirt and everything, the grass, whatever it is, the rock should be going away down, should not be going up. So basically, when water's running, it should not be going down towards your house. It should be going away from it. So that's a really simple fix. So you can add dirt, and just change that grading if you need to. Gutter downspouts. If you don't have a downspout extension, you don't want that water going straight down from the spout, like right next to your foundation over time. That's just going to uh, cause water problems for your foundation unnecessarily. So that's why they have those extensions. You see them on the downspouts so that you can direct water away from the house. Water is the number one biggest problem with a house. Keep it dry and you're going to have far fewer problems. And getting into water in Colorado Springs, we have a 3-day a week water rule. If you're doing new grass and you put in new sod, you can apply for an exception for that. But otherwise, the city does not want people to be wasting water and spending too much of it on grass. There's also a rebate program if you want to switch from grass to something else. If you're into xeriscaping or doing clover, some people I've seen that done here and successfully. We're looking at doing that ourselves, maybe switching over to clover, maybe some xeriscaping here and there. I do want to have an area for the kids to play in, but at some point, we'll do that. But otherwise, you are watering your lawn, and during the July, especially August, which is now, that's when it becomes the hardest to keep and maintain that Kentucky bluegrass because the sun is just unrelentless. And especially now this year, it's even hotter. We have all these, days where we're in the high 80s and 90s easily for our highs. And so today I think it's a high of 87. So it's just that kills the grass. And I still can't justify watering like a maniac to keep it green because I don't want to waste. And so, yeah, switch to clover, just let it die is kind of been my motto. And then when I bought the house, the owner had taken pretty good care of the grass. So it was similar to having brand new sod in terms of quality. And then keeping a healthy shine on that grass has taken effort. So I used to use fertilizers for different seasons, and now since having backyard chickens, I've moved away from fertilizer altogether. During the winter, you're supposed to hand water your grass like once a month or maybe once a week, particularly if you're not getting snow. I don't really follow that rule because I don't want to, but I've got the neighbors that are totally gung ho about their lawns and they take good care of them. I don't have the time for it, and I just don't. So I aerate the lawn in the fall, so you get those little poop things on your lawn. So if you ever see a lawn, you're like, why does it have so much poop on it? That's actually probably just the aeration where they have this machine that just has these little metal spikes that just pulls these, makes these holes in the ground, and you have these plugs that are left. So you want to leave those plugs on. So if you have somebody aerate, leave those plugs on your lawn because they're just extra nutrients for the grass. If you can't stand them and you're walking on them, and then yeah, you can get rid of them. And then, speaking of, I also redistribute the grass clippings. So when I mow the lawn, I'll just put the grass clippings back on the grass because that's just extra nutrients that you can give back to your lawn. When you buy your house or your property from the person who's selling it to you, it's going to have problems. When you inherit the house, you're going to inherit problems, maybe some deferred maintenance. You may get a house where the seller was just took care of everything. It's all in tip-top shape. Don't expect it. Be grateful if you get it, but I would expect you're going to have to do some things, especially when you get into the house. You expect to spend about $1,000 when you move in or after you move in, just to start taking care of little things here and there. And then as far as maintenance, I would set aside some money for maintenance, perhaps a couple $1,000s a year. And that's just in case something happens, because every year, typically, it seems like an appliance goes out. I had to have a plumber come out to replace the water fridge line and the hookup piece that connected to the plumbing. And then the year before that, had to replace the dishwasher line because that was leaking. Next year, probably the oven. Actually, we replaced the microwave. I think it was early this year in January. So the oven's probably next. And that's just, we bought our house in 95. I'm sorry, the house was built in 95. We bought it in 2018. And the appliances are not 95, they're newer than that. But prior owner did a lot of DIY kind of stuff and wasn't the greatest work. And that's pretty common here. That when you're buying a house, at least here in Colorado Springs, I've seen a lot of that where the prior owner did some repairs and they did an okay job. But I have some clients that come back and say I had to basically pull up all the seller's old work and redo all that. So it's more common basically for houses that you're buying when they're not when they're not new construction. So I'd say that's a potential downside to a pre-existing house, is that you can potentially have some DIY homeowner repairs that you have to undo, or some deferred maintenance is another common thing where this prior owner just didn't take care of the house and didn't do a lot of stuff, or if anything, did the bare minimum. And so then you buy the house and you're like, what is all this? I have to do all this stuff now. Yeah, it's common. And, it's not fun to deal with that, but it's part of buying a house. Or buying a property and then moving in, and then have some contractors come in and fix some things up for you. I am not a handyman by any means. I can do a few things to my car, and now I know how to do a few things with my house. I can change my furnace filter for sure. I know how to drain my sprinkler system in the fall, and that's a thing that you need to do here, at least here in Colorado Springs, where you're in a temperate zone and you're going to have winter, you're going to have snow, you're going to have freezing temperatures. You want to drain your sprinkler system. You want to drain all the water out of that if you have a sprinkler system, because you don't want to leave water in there. Otherwise, when the ground freezes, you're going to burst your pipes. So you want to drain those, and then in the springtime, you can fill them back up and get ready for watering your lawn. But you can hire somebody to blow them out. You can rent equipment to do it yourself. You can kind of drain some lines. Find it relatively simple to have a contractor just do a quick blowout with a proper machine. You can turn it back on yourself. Then the way I learned how to do all this was through YouTube. I just looked up how do I, you know, do that with my sprinkler system, and I had people showing me, here's the water shutoffs that you need to do. Here, you take this with this screwdriver or this flathead and turn this. So, that's just how I learned, was just somebody has already made the video on YouTube. And if it feels like it's a bit out of your control, I mean, that's a great time to call a contractor and say, "Hey, can you do this?" And I have, if you can afford it, at least to, spend, however much money, a couple $100 for, maybe a handyman or a plumber to do some light things, versus, I've had the blower motor in our furnace went out last year, and so I had an HVAC person come out. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know it was the blower motor, but the furnace just stopped working. So had him come out the next day and figured out what that was, and then had that same dude come out a different time because the furnace wasn't working, and turns out the furnace filter was covered in, dust from those baby chickens. Other things that I have done YouTube searches for on my house was how to turn the pilot light off or on my fireplace, on my gas fireplace, the thermostat, the air conditioning, how to change the actual hardware that lets you change the temperature from those old ones to the Nest thermostat, and then potentially needing a power wire and to add that to everything. Had to Google and YouTube all that too. A toilet tank that wouldn't stop draining, had to Google that and look that up, see what was wrong with that. Ordering parts, getting them online and having them shipped to me to like fix the problem. I've done that. So the more you watch, or the more you watch other people fixing stuff, the smarter I have gotten about my home and how to upkeep it. As far as contractor recommendations, my office has a running list of people that they recommend for various things. So if you have questions about particular people, let me know. Most of those recommendations I haven't used myself, though. So I'm not necessarily going, yeah, these are great, use them. But I take that into consideration when I'm looking for a contractor. I will ask my office and see who they recommend. I will also I'll go on the Nextdoor app and see who my neighbors recommend. I'll go on Facebook. I've got a local neighborhood Facebook group for my specific neighborhood. I'll go on there and I'll ask that question. Who do you recommend to, get some interior painting done or some landscaping or whatever the thing is? And I trust those recommendations because I know those people. If you're a plant person, you're likely going to want a property with south-facing windows because that's going to give you the most light. That's going to be the afternoon light and perhaps a harsher light. So depending on the kind of plants that you have, think about window placement. But also, I'm sure you're aware of the zoning that you're in. So don't go get tropical plants at the Home Depot or Lowe's or Phelan Gardens because they're not suited for here. You want to get zone 4. That's the plant that you want. You want plants that can grow in zone 4 because that's where we are. That's what our zone is here. So tropical plants look great. Maybe you can keep them alive indoors. Probably won't. One other kitchen appliance that you should have is a toaster oven or an air fryer. I have some clients who swear by their air fryer. So it takes up way less space and you can cook something very quickly in it. The toaster oven is a mini oven and the air fryer is a mini fryer. So it's, if depending on how you like to eat whatever, way less warm up time as well. Colorado Springs is very dry and we're at a high altitude, so it start doing what the Europeans do and put on body lotion. I put on body lotion every day when I get out of the shower. Sometimes you may need to apply it often throughout the day, at least if you're washing your hands, you might need to put on lotion more, but just keep yourself hydrated, drink a lot of water, and make sure that your skin stays moist as well because it will crack easily, and it's uncomfortable to have cracked, chapped skin. There are things that you want to have backups for your property. The number one thing that I recommend having backups for is batteries for your smoke alarms and your carbon monoxide detectors. They take that weird 9-volt battery, right? And you don't have those. You check right now. I know you don't have those. So you need to go get to the store and pick up like a 6 pack, a 10 pack, or whatever, because God forbid in the middle of the night you hear that beep and you're like, oh, I cannot. And it's too high up there. You got to get a chair and you got to change it. Don't put yourself through that and be like, I don't have batteries. I'm just going to have to deal with this all night. Don't do that. Now you know. Go get the batteries so that you don't have to hear warning, low battery. No, I do not want to hear that all night. Go change that. Get the batteries. And speaking of, just get backup batteries for everything. Get double A's, triple A's, C's, D's, because something stupid is going to need that in the house that you didn't even know existed before. Some baby toy, some electronic that is part of the house. Watch batteries. Get those too. Other things that you're going to want to have backups for: toilet paper, paper towels, soap, any condiments that you typically use, maybe some dried rice and beans, some backup cuts of meat that you can freeze. Get a reach in freezer if you have the space for it, maybe in your garage, and you can put extra frozen stuff in there. If you want to get an extra propane tank for the grill that you could store, that could be an option for backup. We covered batteries, so batteries in general. Light bulbs. Check the ceiling bulbs for all these different, ceiling fans or lights, because they may take weird bulbs by themselves. And unless you're going to change the hardware for that, you're just going to have to get a separate bulb for that instead. And it's nice just to have that bulb on hand instead of having to go to the store and wait to have that light be reinstalled. One thing about dogs and grass and people and their pets is that people will gladly let their dogs pee and poop in your front lawn. That's just going to happen. Just expect it. Everybody's different. Some people make sure their dogs don't go on your yard, or if they do, they clean up with a little doggy bag. Sometimes they just leave it there. And so it's kind of up to you if you want to say something to them or not. I've had like the please don't poop on my yard signs out, and it doesn't work for the people that you catch the same people on your cameras. You can see it's the same people that let their dog poo or pee or whatever. It doesn't matter. So you just have to talk to them if it's that big of a deal, or just let it be. Regarding homeowners insurance here, it's all over the place. I mean, they haven't stopped writing policies here in Colorado Springs like they have in California, but it's expensive. I had a client who had a few quotes for between $45,000 for the year for homeowners insurance. Meanwhile, mine was $2,600 for the year this year to renew. So it really is very dependent on location, the property itself, a variety of different factors. But it's basically more expensive now because there have been a lot more hailstorms here in Colorado Springs, a lot more wildfires overall, and here as well. A note about your homeowner's insurance is don't file too many claims within a given period. So I wouldn't file more than 2 or 3 claims with your homeowner's insurance for the life of your homeowner's insurance, if possible. Just because if you file too many claims, your homeowner's insurance can and will drop you. So just be advised that you save your homeowner's insurance for something that you really need it for, and not something that's kind of you could pay for it out of pocket or file the claim and it's going to cost about the same to you. Just do it out of pocket because you want to save those claims for when you really need them. Here in Colorado Springs, you'll start getting snow that sticks to the ground in January. You'll get that through April. Now that it's starting to warm up overall here a little bit, that may change. We'll see, but that's what it's been in the past. Is we'd have our winter from January to April, where it would be at its coldest, and you're more. That's when the time frame you're more likely to get snow is. So the snowfall does not stick around very long. It's here for 2 to 3 hours, maybe a day tops before it melts. Very Rarely we get the snowdrift or a blizzard. It's not very often that we get that. So when it does happen, that could stick around for a few days, sure. But I have driven a rear wheel drive sedan for most of my driving life here in Colorado Springs and not had a problem with it. We have hills here. You want to be aware of that during the wintertime on your street, whatever property that you're in. Be aware of the street if it's slanted or, slopes downward. When you're driving down that hill to get to the stop sign, make sure you're braking early. You never know when there might be a patch of ice. And again, the snow melts fairly quickly, but every once in a while we have that snow that sticks around. It melts a little bit, and then overnight it freezes and turns into ice. So you want to be careful there. Other things that you might want to have a drill, uh, some kind of tool set if you want to do some odd jobs around the house. Hang up a picture. Yeah, hang up a mirror. You're going to want a stud finder, a hammer, a screwdriver, a drill, all those sorts of things. If you want to get crafty or do some DIY projects, maybe you want a table saw or you want one of those hand circular saws. If you're into woodworking, you might appreciate some tools like that. I did reattach or recreate a piece of trim that was missing by our back sliding door, and I had some of the extra trim that the prior owner had, so I just used a circular saw and trimmed that down. I had to get the angle just right, so I had to mess around and make a few attempts, but I finally got it. Maybe you want to touch up the siding and you match the paint, or you have some, if you're lucky enough to still have some paint the prior homeowner had from when they had the house painted, then you can do some touch ups like that. So a paintbrush, roller, some paint. When you have a condominium or a townhouse or a patio home or otherwise any exterior and any common grounds is taken care of, maintained for you. Unless you're in that, when you're buying a single family property that has a little bit of land, just a little plot, you generally have some grass to maintain. You might have a sprinkler system. You might have some trees, some shrubbery. Maybe you have, very minimal of that stuff in there, but generally there is some maintenance that goes on in that. If you've got trees, you're going to have leaves in the fall. If you've got wintertime here, you're going to have snow and you're going to have sometimes wet slush that can turn into ice at night, and you want to get that off of your sidewalks. But yeah, otherwise, it's snow that falls, and you can get that off your sidewalks later or let it melt. If it's a half inch or even an inch of snow, it's going to melt really fast. So you likely don't even need to shovel it. And the city ordinance here is that you shovel your sidewalks within 24 hours of the snowfall being done. You've got plenty of time to do that. I have never seen anybody get arrested or cited or even their wrist slapped for anything related to that. But nobody really wants people are good about getting the snow off the ground. Nobody wants that on the ground. I enjoy shoveling, so I don't mind. So you've got lawn and maintenance care with a house that you're not going to have with condominium or a townhouse, and you're also going to have the maintenance of the utility items or the furnace and the AC and the ductwork that you wouldn't necessarily have when you're renting out an apartment. You can have somebody just take care of anything that goes wrong, any appliance that has a problem. You can call somebody in. And you can do that when you have a house, but now you have to pay for it. So there are certainly appliance repair companies that you can use as well. There's all sorts of companies that will help if something gets broken. But generally, a handyman, a plumber, maybe an appliance repair person are going to be your big go-tos. And maybe a water remediation company. And that's just if you have some sudden water issue that happens, but generally not a concern here in Colorado. One other thing that you might get for your property is a whole house humidifier. You don't have to have it, but it can be a great addition if the air is just too dry for you, especially during the winter. The humidifier can be great for keeping a constant level of humidity without it just being too dry. And the alternative is to use extra body face lotion and just keep moist and hydrated as much as possible, or do both. One thing I'm pretty wary of now, after having owned a house for 5 years, is sources of water. I really don't want water anywhere near my property as much as possible. I thought about getting one of those water fountains, like the indoor ones you put on your desk, and la la la, tra la la la, you hear that water, and then like, oh, it's gonna be just a trickle, right? So, well, we got to get a big one. Well, what if you get a big indoor water fountain? Oh, you have to make it outdoors. What if you get those wall water fountains with like the lion? And then it just became this. I had this thought of why would I put this huge thing of water in my house? This is just a problem waiting to happen. This is a flood waiting to happen. Especially if we go on vacation, that the day we leave is the day that the kids mess around with it right before we leave. We already have, there's already a dishwasher, there's already a refrigerator with a water line, there's already a kitchen sink. There's already a water heater. There's already a washing machine. There's already all of these different ways that water can get into your property without the weather being involved. Your plumbing can break too. You leave your hose bib or your hose running. You forget to shut it off, or your kid turns it on, forgets to shut it off. Any of that could happen. And so I don't want to bring another source of water into the house that doesn't need to be there. So unfortunately, the desk water fountain is not going to happen. One thing I did with my basement with the window well specifically was we have aluminum window wells as opposed to like those white ones. We have the silver looking ones because our house is a little bit older, 95. And so I found these like these poster things that are images that you can put on the inside part. Oh, let me just show you of the window well here. Look, you see that over there? So that's an actual, just a piece of paper printed out that I had shipped to me. And you see it's just whatever. Really bad at I suck at this. But you can see there's like a mountain image over there. And then behind me over here, there's another one, but I have a map in the way. So, but I just thought that was cool to have those images there so I wasn't staring at that ugly aluminum color. So that could be something that you do. I showed a house that actually had that in the window wells, which is where I got the idea. But they also had like, I have some fake plants, but it was done really nice, really clean. And so I thought, well, yeah, I can do that. If you have leaves, if you have trees growing, God, close to your property, where the branches overhang or a little bit close, make sure you clean your gutters. Just have somebody clean them and just make sure there's no pine needles or leaves because you don't want that getting blocked in there. Because then when it snows, all that rainfall, that snowfall is going to get stuck in there and it's going to turn into ice and it's just going to, well, it'll freeze and melt, and then it's going to come down onto your porch and just drip down because it's going to fill the gutter and then just overflow. I've experienced this. So make sure they're clean, and if you still get extra snow and ice trapped up there, you can have somebody, or you can install a heat tape. Where you just put it along the inside part of the gutter and have it automatically turn on when the temperature gets to a certain degree, gets too cold, or just turn it on manually as you need. You can get a snow blower. I had one for a little bit. I rarely used it. I prefer a shovel. Most of the time, the snow is not enough to warrant getting the snow blower out. And I hate doing the extension cord. If you got like the power thing and it was charged like an electronic or an electric thing, maybe, but it's really easy just to get the shovel out and just shovel any snow. There maybe been 2 or 3 times in the past 2 or 3 years where a snow blower came in handy when the snow was really wet and heavy and, piled this high. So it's like piled that high on the driveway, but as you're shoveling it, it piles up and then, that gets really heavy. So a snow blower, sure, but then you have to maintain that, and then when it gets jammed, you have to unjam it. So I really like my leaf blower. I found this leaf blower at Goodwill, and it's amazing. And it's a plug-in as well, so I have to use extension cords. I hate extension cords. They're like Super Nintendo cords. They get tangled up for no reason. You put them away just right, and you're like, why is it tied in a knot? So I use this leaf blower and it's amazing. I blow out my whole garage with it. I don't even blow leaves with it. I use a rake for my leaves. I don't use the leaf blower for what it was intended for. I just use it to get all the crap that blows, all the dirt and dust and leaves and whatever rocks and crap, that gravel that blows up into the garage, blow it all out. It's great. Just try not to do it on, Sunday or any morning, early. It's loud, right? But do it in the afternoon and it's fantastic. It gets everything clean. One thing I recently purchased was a moisture meter, and this is just a thing that will check and tell you, like, as a percentage if you have moisture. So I should have, it's in my car. But you put it up against your hand and it'll tell you, it beeps because you're mostly water, right? So you put it up against the drywall, and if you get one of the like a two-in-one, you can use either the prongs or you can use the sensor detector, so you can go through different materials other than drywall. You can go through wood, concrete, metal, and so you can see what the moisture content is on the other side. So I'm just going through my house like, oh yeah, let's see what does this look like. It's so much fun. And it's relatively inexpensive at this. I think it was like $30. The infrared or the heat sensor gun that home inspectors have. That one's like 2 or 300 bucks minimum for those. So that one's a bit pricier, harder to justify just for having fun with it. But if you're concerned about moisture, that would be a fairly simple thing to get, I would say, just to have fun to play around with. I would also recommend getting a stud finder. I think I mentioned it already, but one of those things you're going to love having, especially if you need to screw like a plant hanger from the ceiling and you want to find a stud so that you don't have to use one of those plastic things and hope that it holds. Like, just screw it straight into the stud, right? But you have to make sure that it's at their exact right spot, otherwise it's not going to work, right? So the stud finder is great for that. And then otherwise, you just use the plastic thing that they gave you with the package at Home Depot or Lowe's, and you just, but you're going to need a drill for that, right? Get some drill bits, different sizes. Get the, like, whatever the one you can actually drill the holes with. I'm so technical. And because you want to drill the hole, especially if you're drilling into a stud, you don't just drill the screw straight into it. You need to take a bit and drill the hole that's a little bit smaller than the screw, and you need to drill that hole into the stud first before you drill that screw in. If you screw that screw in directly, you're going to split that wood. That's not great if you're splitting a stud. Don't do that. So if you drill a hole in there first and then you put the screw in and drill the screw in, you're not going to split that wood. So that's a good tip to know. I have shocked myself with an electrical outlet on several occasions. A few of those times were on purpose, because I'm a guy. Of course I did that. And I'm a real estate agent. Of course I had to do that. I needed to do that, of course, so that I could tell this story that I'm telling you now. And I could say, I did that once, but why'd you do that? Because I had to know. I am a homeowner. I have to know how that feels. I'm not sticking my hand in a 220 volt. I know better. But I'm just saying, when I had to, so what was I doing? I was taking the electrical outlet down here out completely. So I put a mirror up on the other side. I'm not going to show you, but I put a squat rack in over here on the behind or in front of me here, and I put a mirror on the wall, and it's one of those big mirrors. The problem is there is an electrical outlet, like a plug-in, outlet, like right in the spot I need to. So I took that face cover off and then pushed the actual outlet thing back so I could just place the mirror on. So in doing that, I wanted to actually disconnect the outlet entirely because I didn't like having it open like that. So I disconnected it while the breaker was still on. So yeah, I'm awful. I know. So I got my shocks. Sure. I have tripped the breakers in my house multiple times just because there's too many things plugged in. Actually, the biggest culprit right now is the paper shredder here in my basement. It is just takes up way too much energy and then just trips the breakers. But I've also got this computer, this laptop, these two monitors, a light, a microphone. I've got a few things plugged in order to make this setup work out. But yeah, adding the paper shredder does not help. So yes, I have tripped it. I suppose I could increase the size of the electrical system, but I'm not going to do that for this. The prior owners had a hot tub that they used and had a sub panel for. Um, we've never had a hot tub, so I haven't tried it out, so I couldn't tell you. I have gotten weather stripping and applied it to my garage door, front door, just to give it extra padding. So I've done little odd jobs here and there. The trim between our tile and our hardwood floor is off because the prior owner added tile. I'm pretty sure on top of an existing hardwood floor, and on top of some existing floor at least. And so the tile floor in the kitchen, as opposed to the rest of the main level, is higher. And so they just moved to the trim up to compensate. And so there's like this transition where it's, and it's just kind of is what it is. I don't really look at it. It doesn't bother me. But, our popcorn ceilings also don't bother me. And they bother my wife a heck of a lot. So, actually, we don't have any popcorn in the basement down here. But yeah, not in the kitchen either, just in the living room ceiling and in the upstairs and all the bedrooms. There's popcorn ceiling. So I'm not really sure what's going on with that, but yeah, a lot of people hate that popcorn ceiling, and I'm really, again, not looking at it that much, so it's just a personal thing. During the summer, it gets really hot here. You need to have an air conditioning unit. If you don't have a whole house unit, you can get a window unit or plug it, get something. You're likely going to want one for the whole house if you can afford it. I would highly recommend going that route. But if you do something in your window, that's fine too. It's just whatever you need to cool down because it does get hot here during the summer, especially now. We're in the 80s and 90s for temperatures here. So if you're not going to do that, you could do a fan. I've got a couple of neighbors who either have attic fans or they had attic fans installed. I got a client they bought a house in Rockrimmon that has an attic fan. And so the attic fan, the way that works is it'll pull outside air in, but you have to have your windows open for that. And it'll pull the outside air in and cool the house down that way, but it won't make your house any cooler than the outside temperature is. So if it's hot outside, it's not going to help you. So this is why I say having an actual air conditioning unit is going to be your best bet for keeping yourself cool. If you're up in the mountains, Woodland Park, you're not likely going to need the air conditioning so much because it's a lot cooler up there. But here in the valley in Colorado Springs, you absolutely need it. With the snow and the snow melt that we have during the wintertime, where you have snow and then it melts and then it snows and then it melts, you've got all this moisture during the winter. And then with this moisture that we've had during the summer, that topic comes up again is that you've got this affects your concrete. This is going to start creating and aggravating cracks in your driveway, in your sidewalks, and that's a natural thing. That's not really much you can do about that. It's just maintenance that you'll either take care of or won't over time. But if you don't take care of it, it'll just get worse. So, in order to help mitigate that, you can use one of those Quikrete bottles, which is those pre-made concrete squeeze bottles you can get at the home improvement store. And they're just done. They're already made. You just open it, squeeze it out. It's already concrete, and you just squeeze it into the whatever the crack is, and seal whatever cracks that you develop in your sidewalk and driveways or your patio, and that will extend the life of your concrete, so that you don't have to replace it as quickly. Your property taxes are generally covered through your lender, so it's not something that you have to set aside money for every year necessarily. It's just going to be rolled into your loan and escrow. Your homeowner's insurance will be another thing that gets rolled into your loan, essentially. Your lender wants to make sure that your home is insured so that they get paid if something happens to your house as well. If you have some additional thoughts and ideas on tips and tricks for what it's like being in a house, things that you wish you would have known when you first bought your house or before you bought your house that now you know, leave them in the comments below. My name is Kevin James Bond. I'm a real estate agent here in Colorado Springs, and I work in the Colorado Springs area and Denver and Pueblo too sometimes. If you need help buying or selling property, please let me know, and I would be happy to help you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.